All things in a democracy. Unity.
And Vice President Kamala Harris on character.
It demonstrates who we are, even in dark times. We not only dream, we do.
Show concepts they believe will help the nation heal its divisions.
Fox's Gernal Scott. President Biden immediately got to work signing several executive orders reversing many of former President Trump's policies. They include ones to rejoin the Paris Climate Accord and to require masks on federal property. More orders expected in the coming days. The president also quickly firing 3 Trump appointees. Gone are Michael Pack, head of global media, including broadcaster Voice of America, Kathleen Kraninger, director of the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, and Peter Robb, general counsel for the National Labor Relations Board. And anti-police protests in Portland and Seattle marred Inauguration Day.
We witnessed that group smash the windows here at the Democratic Party of Oregon building. The group chanted many things, including Black Lives Matter. They confronted police and appeared to try and steal an officer's bike.
Sarah Hurwitz with Fox 12 Portland. Police making some arrests. America's listening to Fox News.
Half a day. This is Claire Manglona from Security Title with an important warning. Wire fraud is real, and home buyers and sellers are one of the biggest targets, even on Guam. When sending money by wire transfer, be sure to confirm the wire instructions by phone, not email. In this case, it's good to be suspicious and know who you're dealing with. Let the professionals at Security Title work with you to minimize loss due to wire fraud. We are here to help.
The vaccine is officially here, and we aren't just talking about the COVID vaccine, but a financial vaccine at Bank Pacific. We may not be doctors, but we can help you with your financial health. Whether to take advantage of today's crazy low rates, or just a local bank that has your back. At Bank Pacific, we want to help make 2021 your best year yet. Because for 66 years, where others put branches, we place roots, and we're rooting for you. Equal housing lender, member FDIC.
Anti-police protests are up in Portland and Seattle. In Portland, protesters converged on the streets, voicing their dissatisfaction with President Biden and demanding racial justice.
In Portland, about 100 far-left anti-police protesters dressed all in black marched through the northeast part of the city. Along the way, they smashed windows of a building that houses the Oregon Democratic Party and carried signs saying that we are not governable and a new world from the ashes. Several arrests have been made there. Up the road 2 hours in Seattle, between 50 and 75 protesters, also dressed in black. The protest started at an immigration court, but quickly moved up the road, chanting and breaking windows.
Fox's Trace Gallagher. A helicopter crash in upstate New York kills 3 National Guard members. The Guard says the UH-60 medical evac chopper went down Wednesday evening near Rochester while on a routine mission. No immediate word on the cause. Country music singer Morgan Wallen notches another career high.
Wallen became the second country star to reach #1 on the Rolling Stone Artist 500 chart. The singer pulled in 245.8 million song streams for the week of January 8th. The week was a big one for Wallen as his second album, Dangerous, the double album, broke the record for the biggest debut for a country record in the history of the top 200 albums chart, debuting at #1. To cap it all off, 6 of the songs from the album placed in the top 10 of the Rolling Stone Top 100 Songs chart. Michelle Polino, Fox News.
And all 3 major benchmark indexes closed at record highs. The Dow jumped 257 points to close at 31,188. I'm Carmen Roberts, and this is Fox News.
Rolling sound, quiet, and action.
The Ray Gibson Show, starring Senator Mona Silva Tyron as the news anchor.
I'm Mona Silva Tyron, and I'll have your local news every morning. Life moves pretty fast, so stay with us to stay informed right here on The Point.
Also starring Jerry Roberts as the Better Business Training Guru.
Get out there and do something good today, like listen to us Monday through Friday, 6 to 10 a.m., where we go extra for you.
Produced by the real Joe Cruz. And your warm and intelligent host, Ray Gibson.
It's the Gibson Stream of Consciousness. All the players and all the games with cameos and calls from the most interesting people like you. We'll see and hear you right here on your talk radio superstation.
This is The Point. The Ray Gibson Show was filmed before a live Facebook audience. Buying a house, apartment, or condo, selling your home or property, or maybe you're renting a house, apartment, or condo on Guam. Whatever your real estate needs are, you can count on the professionals at Horizon Properties to take care of you. Call Horizon Properties at 646-7616 or 777-7792. You can also visit them at horizonproperties.com or follow them on Facebook at Horizon Properties Guam. Maria Miller and the professionals at Horizon Properties. All you need to know in real estate. Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Mezcla. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro and Mezcla Dos are open for takeout and delivery services. More details, call the Hagåtña location at 479-2652 or Mezcla Dos Upper Tumon at 646-6295. Get your Mezcla fix at the comfort of your home.
Welcome to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, the only show on talk radio where common sense is a lot more common. Phone lines are now open at 888-TALK. That's 888-8255. And now, The Point proudly brings you Tall Tales with Senator Bob Klitzkie.
A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Well, let's go to Zemi Ikotny. I got a special feature for Zemi Ikotny today. I'm going to wait until I go through the two editorials. But I've got a note here from a website called The Blaze. Liberals lash out at Chuck Todd. So Chuck Todd better spend more time watching a real Zemi Ikotny. Okay, so starting out with today's Daily News editorial, which of course is not a Daily News editorial at all. It's a editorial that Daily News gets from Gannett News Service. And today they're praising the nominee for Attorney General of our new President, Joe Biden. His name is Merrick Garland, and there's a pretty nice editorial here written by one of his law clerks. It's passable, certainly, but once again, it has very little to do with our local situation, and I have to continue expressing my criticism of a newspaper that purports to be our daily newspaper, which it is, going all the way back to the Guam Daily News, started by former Governor Joseph Flores. It went through a couple of iterations. Now it's called the Pacific Daily News, and it's a Gannett newspaper. And they haven't run a local editorial for I'm going to check. I think it's probably been about a year now. And, what kind of a newspaper, calling itself a newspaper, doesn't run local editorials? So then I go from there to the Post, and having a little trouble getting into Facebook here today. I want to make sure I'm there. I like to get into Facebook a little early so I can converse with our Facebookers on Tall Tales, but I wasn't able to do that today, and I'm still not able to do it for some reason. It's just not functioning very well. I think I got it, Jose. Hey, we got two Muslims here, you and Sheila. Jose's wandering around here with a hood on. I guess he's trying to say it's a little bit cooler than what he really needs. I have a really small vest. Okay, so I'm finally getting into Facebook here. let's see. I noticed that Lynn McAfee is already here, and Roland Torres, and Catalina Pinala Rios, Ken Brown, Donna Mela Titano. You guys were better at it than I was. Got in here before I did. Good for you. Okay, another murder case highlights Guam lack of a forensic medical examiner. Less than 24 hours after the discovery of a 61-year-old man who was found beheaded Tuesday afternoon, the Guam Police Department announced they had a suspect. They confirmed the victim's head was found in Dedido, miles from where the victim's body was found, in an apartment unit located in a residential neighborhood that borders Agate and Santa Rita villages. Guam Police Chief Stephen Ignacio said Guam police investigators, quote, worked diligently and feverishly through the night so that we could catch the suspect. They worked feverishly through the night. The suspect, Donovan Allen Chotgaloff Ornelas, may have familiar ties with the victim, Ignacio said, and police are also looking at the possibility that drugs may have been a factor in this crime. This is really interesting, but what does it have to do with the editorial? Ornelas also wears glasses and has a mustache.
They're recycling.
Yeah. The public would have, Chief Ignacio and his team of investigators need to be commended for their work. Yeah, working feverishly, instead of going to the doctor or taking an aspirin or something like that. However, good police investigative work is not the only thing needed to bring a murder case to court. Only a forensic medical examiner can determine the cause and manner of death. True enough, but, you know, I'm not a doctor. I never even watched very many doctor shows on TV, but I think I could probably determine the cause and manner of death in this particular case. Well, maybe not.
It could be accidental.
Yeah, it could have been. Yeah. You can never rule out suicide. This is pretty grim, right? Yeah. Enough of the black humor here. Only a forensic medical examiner can determine the cause and manner of death. Investigators still need the official autopsy report from the forensic medical examiner to support its case. Did the victim die before he was decapitated? Did the beheading cause his death? Does the estimated time of death place the suspect at the scene of the crime? Well, good points. Ideally, Guam's forensic medical examiner would be at the crime scene working alongside police investigators. So we got to find someone who can tolerate working while he has a fever. Yeah. It's no wonder we're having a hard time finding somebody. But Guam hasn't had a forensic medical examiner for almost 2 years. Guam would need to call forensic medical examiners from Hawaii to come in and conduct an autopsy in a criminal case. Gone are the days when our medical examiner came on scene, said police spokesman Sergeant Paul Tapau at the crime scene Tuesday, acknowledging the delay in several death investigations has been caused by Guam's lack of a permanent medical examiner. We anticipate an autopsy will be performed. Hopefully, it will be done in a timely manner. Guam hasn't had a forensic pathologist since February 2019, when Dr. Aurelio Espinola retired. He served as Guam's chief medical examiner for decades. We've seen families waiting for weeks for autopsies of their loved ones before they could be able to bury them properly. On May 31, last year, the body of Konai Kiyoshi was found on the side of the road along Marine Corps Drive in Tamuning near a veterinary clinic. It took the police department 35 days to shift from a death investigation to a homicide investigation because it was waiting for the autopsy of Kiyoshi. No suspect was announced in Kiyoshi's death. Each time a new homicide case comes up, the lack of a forensic medical examiner on Guam becomes more evident. This is a public safety issue we hope GovGuam will resolve. After a 2-year wait, there must be something that can be done to resolve it. Well, I have a suggestion. We have a committee. It's the chief of police, the director of GMH, director of public health, the attorney general, and a caddy and 2 pin setters, I think, make up this committee that are supposed to go out and hire a chief medical examiner. These kinds of so-called task forces never, ever work. And it's so popular. We'll set up a task force. We'll put the chief of police and this and that. And none of these people see it as their own responsibility to make sure this work gets done, because there are 3 or 4 other people on this committee. So they see the meetings of the committee as just something that drags them away from their regular work, which to them is more important. So if you want to make sure that something doesn't get done, set up one of these committees or commissions or task forces where you have the heads of several agencies assigned, and you can be pretty sure that something will not get done. So if there is a senator out there that's looking around for some worthwhile legislation, do this. Repeal that current law that establishes that commission and assign the responsibility to one government person, one person in the government. I would not give it to the mayor's council under any circumstances. It could be the chief of police. It could be the director of GMH. It could be the attorney general. It could be something you assign to the governor, but it can only be one person. That way, if it doesn't get done, we know who to blame. As it is, even the editorial doesn't blame the guilty parties for not getting the job done. 2 cents. Keep the change. All right. As per my promise here, you know, the name of that portion of the show is Zemi Ikotni, and that's my bilingual backwards play on words. Zemi Ikotni, press the meat, which I translate into meet the press. And I've teased Chuck Todd more than once about this, telling Chuck Todd that my Meet the Press is better than his Meet the Press. Of course, I'm damning myself with faint praise as I do that. His Meet the Press, if I were to show you what he looks like on Meet the Press, I'd lean so far over to the left, I'd be out of range of the camera.
I think you slipped and gave the actual name, Meet the Depressed.
Yeah. So I would be out of range of the camera. Chuck leans that far, but Chuck pretends to be an honest broker. You know, we want to examine the issue and see what the sides are, et cetera, et cetera. And he's not. I am not, and I don't purport to be. I'm going to give you the good conservative, bordering on libertarian, Republican viewpoint on things, and I have no problem whatsoever criticizing the left when criticism is due, maybe even if it isn't due. But anyhow, so just to show you what a flop Chuck is, even the left is down on him now. NBC political director and PMS NBC host Chuck Todd was excoriated by many on the left on social media for asking if President-elect Joe Biden would be able to keep his promise on the coronavirus pandemic. You can't say stuff like that. Todd made the comments Tuesday on Meet the Press after noting poll results that show that many Americans believe the country was divided and would remain so for many years. Quote, let's be realistic. Biden's first and most crucial task is to vaccinate America, to fulfill that promise of 100 million vaccinations in his first 100 days, Todd said. The ultimate success or failure of his presidency may hinge simply on the one promise that he made, and it might be his only way to begin immediately cauterizing. Yeah, cauterizing. This is what cauterizing means. If you have a wound, right, that's bleeding, right? Well, you staunch the bleeding and you take something that's hot enough to burn the flesh and you put that on top of the wound and it burns the flesh and seals the wound. That's what cauterize means. Nice choice of words, Chuck. He wants to cauterize the wound. If we burn a few Republicans in the process, well, collateral damage, right? Let's put it this way. If Biden wants to succeed, he has to fulfill that first vaccination promise. If Biden doesn't get it right, he will have failed on the job he was elected to. That sounds like something I could say.
How dare he?
Yeah. Many on the left rushed to social media to register their fury against Todd and NBC for continuing to keep him employed. Quote, "For years I've been on this platform telling you about the lack of professionalism and lack of journalistic ethics and Chuck Todd's daily broadcasts. A lot of you saw it today, but it's been happening for years, and it's past time for MSNBC to do something," said novelist Don Winslow. Don Winslow wrote that bestseller called, I don't know the name. I don't even know if he wrote a comic book. If you agree that Chuck Todd is already a failure before Joe Biden is sworn in, then raise your hand, tweeted progressive activist Grant Stern. Chuck Todd, before Biden is even sworn in, talking about his push for vaccines. If Biden doesn't get it right, he will fail in the job he was elected to do. I repeat, Biden is not even sworn in yet, said liberal activist Oliver Willis. Boy, this is a parade of all-stars here, right? I've been trying to hold my tongue, but I'm done. F asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. Chuck Todd, that's what I have to say. F asterisk, 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 Chuck Todd. Once more for the kids in the back. And the same thing. This was tweeted by liberal actor Matt Walton. I remember when Matt Walton starred in the...
Wrong Waltons.
Walton, yeah. No, I guess that's a different Walton.
He's no John.
No. Todd faced similar rancor from many on the left in July when he merely pointed out that the president had, quote, turned a corner on whether masks should be worn to help stop the spread of coronavirus pandemic. So, Chuck, that's what you get. You know, you're not far enough to the left to run a program like Meet the Press. And that's a horrible feeling for anybody on PMSNBC. Okay, let's go to the card. Program notes. Joe Biden shows us how woke he is on his first day in office. This relates to the first item on the card, meritocracy versus Rachel Levine. And there, as I didn't get to this yesterday, there was a false flag at the Capitol. Ray wanted me to talk about false flags yesterday. I didn't get to it. And when you're talking false flags, I can point out that nowadays you don't even need paper for yellow journalism. And let's see, I've got the media versus GOP. Cancel culture takes on lawyers. I got that on the card twice for some reason. And a couple of stale items from the card. that have been there for a long time that I might not ever get to. Okay, let's start out with meritocracy versus Rachel Levine. Now, I'll have to admit, it's not an admission, it's not a confession, it's something I advance. I am a meritocrat. When it comes to government, I want to see people chosen on the basis of, in accordance with the study of meritocracy. Merit meaning, you know what merit means, good, capable, etc. Crassy, government. Government by capable people. That's what I'm interested in. And I would like to see people that are appointed to high positions in our national capital appointed on the basis of meritocracy. Like our vice president, you know, why is she a meritocracy personified? Joe Biden came along and said, I'm going to choose a vice president, and I want someone who's really capable of doing the job. I'm going to appoint a woman. And then 2 weeks later, the African-American political wing of the Democrat Party said, if you want to be president, you better appoint a black. So he said, okay, I'm going to appoint a black woman to be my vice president, strictly on her merit. Yeah, she'll make such a good vice. Yeah. Anyhow, that's how she got it. And on the subject of meritocracy, I want to share something with you that I just got today. Joe Biden gives hope to every grasping mediocrity everywhere that if you just hang in there for a few generations, do the minimum, be reliably wrong and keep failing up, you too can play the system and achieve the highest office in the land going into your 8th decade of life. Truer words were never spoken. I was just chatting with Jose before the show that, you know, all of the things for a conservative to be disappointed about are certainly happening. But I've lived through liberal presidents before. I could handle it. And as I've pointed out in the past, we've had two parties that every 4 years try to take control of a mechanism called the United States government, a Congress, a presidency, have an impact on the Supreme Court. Different this time, because we have a Democrat Party that doesn't want to take control of it. We have a Democrat Party that wants to re-engineer it. Instead of taking control of the government and then steering it in a direction of their own, they want to go down in the boiler room and they want to put in a different boiler. And they don't want a rudder on the back of the ship. They want a different way of steering it. Or if we're talking electronics, they want to pull out some of the components and they want to change the wiring. So it's not just about controlling the machine, it's about completely changing the machine. And they want to change the machine in such a way that the Republicans will never, ever be able to get in control of it again. That's the game. If you haven't picked up on that yet, that's statehood for the District of Columbia. No more filibuster in the Senate. Sidestepping the Electoral College with that popular vote initiative. Packing the Supreme Court, putting 4 more justices on the Supreme Court to give it balance. Because Trump got to appoint 3 justices. In order to give it balance, they've got to appoint 4. And then using the entire deep state, the whole bureaucracy, to turn the ship hard left. I read that Biden on his first day was going to reverse the rules, the guidance for public schools about who gets to use the boys' room and who gets to use the ladies' room. I'm so glad that that decision is made in Washington, D.C. That's where it ought to be made. Okay, so Rachel Levine is not a meritocratic appointment me take a short break, and I'll come back to Rachel.
The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts of Guam Training.
Hi, I'm Jerry Roberts, and every day on The Ray Gibson Show, I get to comment on the incredibly diverse, fun, challenging, sometimes frustrating, often exciting, but always interesting world of work. I hope you'll be there with us.
You can find daily transcripts of The Extra Point at guamtraining.com. Tune in every weekday morning at 7:20 for The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts, brought to you by Guahan Insurance Services and First Hawaiian Bank on 93.3 The Point.
Chili's has a dinner deal you can't miss. Enjoy a tasty appetizer, 2 bottomless Coca-Cola beverages, and 2 mouth-watering entrees, all for just $35. Treat yourself to entree options like our fall-off-the-bone baby back ribs, personal fajita with chicken, or the ultimate bacon burger. Chili's, 2 for $35. Available daily from 3 p.m. to closing for patio dining or takeout. Chili's is located on the 2nd floor of the Tuman Sands Plaza. Call 648-7377 to place your takeout order today. With Chili's, you can still savor the moment at home.
And now back to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, the one radio show politicians don't want you to listen to. Call now, 888-TALK. That's 888-8255.
So here we are back at Rachel Levine. Joe Biden announced that he is going to appoint Rachel Levine to be an Assistant Secretary of Health. Pretty important position, especially in time of pandemic. And here's what Joe said about her. Dr. Rachel Levine will bring the steady leadership and essential expertise we need to get people through this pandemic, no matter their zip code, race, religion, sexual orientation, gender identity, or disability. You notice he didn't say ideology or anything like that. No. There are some places, some things we just can't stretch. And meet the public health needs of our country in this critical moment and beyond, Biden said in a statement. She is a historic and deeply qualified choice to help lead our administration's health efforts. Yeah, great statement, Joe. A graduate of Harvard and of Tulane Medical School, Levine also serves as the president of the Association of State and Territorial Health Officials. In May, multiple members of the Pennsylvania State House demanded Levine's resignation over the horrific results of the health department's Wuhan virus policy on nursing homes and other facilities under the department's oversight. More than half of Pennsylvania's deaths can be traced back to long-term care facilities. In May, long-term care facilities made up 2/3 of the state's Wuhan virus death, and Levine reportedly delayed releasing public information about the state's response to the virus in such facilities. According to a study of over 1,000 patients admitted to the hospital with the Wuhan virus in New York City, over 90% contracted the virus from close contact with an infected person, including sheltering at home or contained living situations like in nursing homes and jails. In March, the Pennsylvania Department of Health under Levine released guidelines for nursing facilities directing them to continue to accept new admissions and receive readmissions for current residents who had been discharged from hospital who are stable to alleviate the increasing burden in the acute care settings. They may include stable patients who have had the Wuhan virus. This order contradicted guidance from the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services. This guidance does not direct any nursing home to accept Wuhan virus positive patient if they are unable to do so safely, the federal agency wrote. Instead, CMS advised that, quote, nursing homes should admit any individual who would normally admit to their facility, including individuals from hospitals where a case of Wuhan virus is present, only if the nursing home can follow CMS guidance. CMS Administrator Seema Verna also warned under no circumstances should a hospital discharge a patient to a nursing home that is not prepared to take those patients' needs. Yet in Pennsylvania, that was the rule that Rachel laid down. The Department of Justice Civil Rights Division opened an investigation into 4 states demanding data how states protected citizens in nursing homes. In May, Rachel Levine removed her mother from a personal care home as Wuhan virus spread in such elderly facilities. Levine insisted that the mother was in personal care home, not a nursing home. My mother requested, and my sister and I, as her children, complied to the move to another location during Wuhan virus outbreak, Levine said at a press conference in May. My mother is 95 years old. She's very intelligent, more than competent to make her own decisions. Levine's mother may indeed be able to make her own decisions, but this removal still seems suspicious. Did Levine move to protect her mother from the virus, even while ordering facilities for the elderly to admit Wuhan virus patients? Biden seems to have overlooked serious questions about Levine's handling the pandemic. He also likely picked Levine in order to gain accolades from the identity politics left. So, and there's a lot more to this Levine story, and her name has been in the internet probably at least for the last 6 months, wouldn't you say, Jose?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That's when I first heard of him.
Yeah. So you're wondering, why would a new president pick somebody who's already trouble, who's already going to be the focal point of people who are going to be critical of the beginning of administration, saying, why in the world did he pick Rachel Levine for that really important job? Well, I have the answer for you. This spells it all out. On Tuesday, incoming President Joe Biden announced he would nominate transgender Pennsylvania Health Secretary Rachel Levine, born Richard Levine, for Assistant Secretary of Health. Levine, a male who identifies as female, faced harsh criticism for removing his mother from a personal care home during the pandemic after he had directed nursing facilities to admit people who had previously tested positive. So I think that pretty much tells the story, doesn't it? She was fully qualified. She's a man who is, what does the column say here? A man who identifies as a female. You can't get any more qualified than that.
Case closed.
Yeah, good job, Joe. Diversity is our strength. That's the mantra we have to keep saying. Now, the fact that she brings scandal with her, well, we'll just, a minor detail. And more good news from the Biden White House. Biden White House immediately updates contact page for transgender pronouns. Just hours after Democrat Joe Biden swearing in as President of the United States, the official White House contact page has already been updated to ask users to include their preferred gender pronouns, another early gift to LGBT activists. Among the White House contact page's usual fields for names, in other words, you want to contact the White House, you go to the website, there's a form there, you fill it in and you send it off, right? And this is the kind of stuff you put in that form. Your name, prefix, Mr., Miss, whatever, phone number. But now, your preferred pronouns. You could choose she, her, he, him, they, them, other, and prefer not to share. That's the best one. I prefer not to share my pronouns. So if you're talking about me, you cannot refer to me as him because I don't want to share my pronouns. Yeah. That website was updated so quickly after Biden took over. It may suggest it was the work of left-wing employees already within the Trump administration, a long-standing source of frustration for Republican presidents. The change is in line with the aggressively pro-LGBT platform Biden ran on, the centerpiece of which was forcing widespread accommodation of homosexuality and gender fluidity on private citizens by urging passing of the so-called Equality Act. During the campaign, he went so far as to endorse children as young as 8 deciding they're transgender. In other words, he would allow an 8-year-old who has male plumbing to decide, I'd rather be a female. Yeah, 8-year-olds are more than capable of making that decision.
They're not capable of making a decision whether to do their homework or not.
Absolutely. He chose, and then the article says earlier this week, he chose Pennsylvania Health Secretary Rachel Levine, a man who claims to be a woman, as Assistant Secretary of Health. It's great, you know. Now, this fits into so nice to his suit about bringing us all together. I'm in search of unity. I want us all to get along, which is nice, but if you don't intend to do it, if you intend to do this kind of stuff, at least be honest about it. I intend to go this whole sexual anarchy route, whether you like it or not, because that's what I ran on. And if you don't like it, well, there'll be another election in 4 years, and you can perhaps you can get a better result then. But that's what I'm going to do instead of I'm for unity. We all need to get along. Or maybe Lou could write his speeches for him. We're all in this together. Yeah.
Did you ever collect baseball cards when you were young?
I did, but you know, when I was young, baseball cards were relatively new. The only one I can ever remember having.
Well, they came in cigarette packs, right? At the time.
Bubble gum.
Oh, bubble gum. Okay.
Bubble gum.
Yeah. No, originally it was cigarette packs.
The only one that I can ever remember having was Del Crandall, catcher for the Boston Braves.
Nice.
Of Boston.
That's
Braves.
A long time ago.
Yeah.
Well, this feels like the same concept of collecting cards, right?
Uh-huh.
And nowadays it's like film and comic book. You're collecting which characters you have and that you don't have, so that you have a full collection.
Yeah. So yeah, let's see. We have a black and a brown and a transgender, and you got to have. Which one is the most capable? Oh, I don't know. Which one is the most qualified? Beats the heck out of me.
But I check my boxes.
Yeah. Now, there is a little good news here today, and that's this. During the presidential primary, Biden's eventual vice president candidate, Kamala Harris, announced at a town hall event that, quote, my pronouns are she, her, and hers. Wow. Such orthodoxy.
There will be a test.
Yeah. Now, how long that'll last, you know, now that the election is over, I don't know. Okay, let's take a short break here.
Rolling sound, quiet, and action.
The Ray Gibson Show. Starring Senator Mona Silva Tyron as the news anchor.
I'm Mona Silva Tyron, and I'll have your local news every morning. Life moves pretty fast, so stay with us to stay informed right here on The Point.
Also starring Jerry Roberts as the Better Business Training Guru.
Get out there and do something good today. Like listen to us, Monday through Friday, 6 to 10 a.m., where we go extra for you.
Produced by the real Joe Cruz. And your warm and intelligent host, Ray Gibson.
It's the Gibson Stream of Consciousness. All the players and all the games with cameos and calls from the most interesting people like you. We'll see and hear you right here on your talk radio superstation. This is The Point.
The Ray Gibson Show was filmed before a live Facebook audience.
When's the last time you looked at your homeowner's insurance?
A homeowner's policy protects much more than just your house. It also protects you against claims from someone being hurt on your property. If a visitor is injured at your place, how much are you covered for? The smart thing to do is get the answer today.
That's the Insurance Extra Point. Get out there and make something good happen today by calling Guahan Insurance Services at 475-1162 or visit us at the Camacho Landmark Center in Tamuning.
$5 foot long. High with veggies.
They're back. Any foot long is a $5 foot long when you buy one at regular price. At participating locations, Subway. Eat fresh.
Okay, next on the agenda here is false flag versus the Capitol. And this is by request from the host of the morning show, the one, the only, the legendary Ray Gibson. As I touched on false flags a couple days ago, and Ray said, that was pretty interesting. I hope Bob talks about it a little bit more. So a false flag is a military or other kind of operation where the attacker attempts to conceal its identity so that you think it is a force other than what it really is. And the term began back in the days of pirate ships. Are you listening, Jeff? If you want to know what a pirate looks like, go out to Pirates Cove in Ipan Telefofo. There's a real live pirate out there.
Arr.
Yeah. And if you say something to him like, you know, Jeff, you got a nice place here, he'll say, shiver me timbers. Arr. So pirate ships would raid ships of any nation, come on board, steal a cargo, steal women, steal whatever they could, and sometimes even steal a whole ship. And the way they did this was when they spotted a ship, for instance, flying the Union Jack, they would run up the Union Jack themselves. So the Brits would think, oh, here comes one of our brother British ships. And when they got close enough to come on board, it was already too late. Or if it was a French ship, they'd fly the tricolor, etc. So they were flying a false flag. So that's become a term of art. And what brought this up on Ray's show was the Spanish-American War. And the Spanish-American War started ostensibly when the United States battleship Maine was sunk in Havana Harbor. So there had been a 10-year revolution in Cuba trying to drive the Spanish out of Cuba. And the United States had always, well, for a long, long time, had eyes on Cuba. The United States even tried to buy Cuba from Spain at one time, offered them $50 million. The Spanish turned it down. So the United States had always had their eye on it. And then there was this humanitarian dimension to the conflict because the American press was telling how mean the Spanish were to the people who lived in Cuba, what bad people they were, and how tough living was there. And, you know, you can really sympathize with the Cuban revolutionaries. So the United States sent the Maine into Havana Harbor to protect American lives and property. That's always a good start. But the ship blew up. Well, later on, probably at least 60 years later, we found out that there was no foul play here. The reason the ship blew up had something to do with the coal bunkers, and it was not arson that caused the ship to sink. But the United States was quick to blame the sinking of the Maine on the Spanish, and this was the reason that the United States declared war on Spain. Now, I've elaborated many, many times that the real objective of the Spanish-American War was not Cuba, was not Puerto Rico. Believe it or not, it wasn't even Guam. It was the Philippines. The United States, you know, the Republicans in the United States, the imperialists they wanted to start our own empire. Everybody else had an empire. We ought to have one too. And the United States had always maintained that there should be an open door in China. There shouldn't be any Hong Kongs or Waiheis or Port Arthurs or foreign concessions in China. China should be open to everybody because the China trade was important to American merchants. So that was our position. But we needed something like that ourselves. So how about the Philippines? Nice group of islands close to China, great sighting for our China trade. So the day that the United States declared war on Cuba, the American fleet had been in Hong Kong. It set sail for Manila under Admiral Dewey, who quickly defeated the Spanish Navy, took control of Manila, and not very long after that took control of the Philippines, fought a brutal 4 or 5 year war that we refer to as the Philippine Insurrection. The Filipinos under Emilio Aguinaldo thought the Americans would be their allies, and they actually fought alongside the Americans. They thought the Americans would be their allies to drive off the Spanish so that the Filipinos could declare their independence and become their own country. It didn't work out that way. Back to Manila Bay and the Maine. So the theory was that American operatives had actually blown up the Maine as a pretext for starting the Spanish-American War.
Whoa.
And there was a lot of chatter along those lines. And I think it was probably only revisionists in the beginning who said, no, that wasn't it. You know, it was kind of like, yeah, everybody knew. A reverse Moquita. Everybody knew, and no one decided to investigate, right? That the Spanish blew up the Maine. So that the fighting slogan was, remember the Maine. So that's how the Spanish-American War got started. So that would be a classic example of a false flag operation, that the United States blew up the Maine so that there would be a pretext to go to war against the Spanish. We never kept Cuba. We kept Puerto Rico, still got it, and we kept the Philippines up until 1946. And because at the time in 1898 ships were burning coal, the United States, for part of its Pacific Empire, needed coaling stations. So in 1891, the United States entered into an agreement with the Kingdom of Hawaii to lease Pearl Harbor as a coaling station. That still wasn't enough. So when the Treaty of Peace with Spain was signed up, the United States says, yeah, we want the Philippines, we'll give you $20 million. We want Puerto Rico, and also we want Guam. We don't want the rest of those islands out there, Micronesia. You can keep those, Spain. We only want Guam. We want it for a coaling station. So as it turned out, you know, the way I see everything falling into place, had the Maine not been sunk, and had we not been remembering the Maine and fought the war with Spain, this would be a Japanese island right now. Because the Japanese, after they beat the Russians in the so-called Russo-Japanese War in 1905, after they sank the Russian fleet in the Tsushima Strait, decided, hey, we can play this game just like the Europeans can. So we could have our own empire too. And they did. They took Korea and Taiwan. That was the beginning of their empire. And obviously, islands in this part of the world would have been within their sphere of influence. When World War I broke out, the Japanese quickly declared war on Germany to take all of the German islands, which the Germans had bought from Spain after they lost Guam. So the Japanese were, pretty much in control of this whole area in the Pacific. And had the United States not taken the Philippines, it would not have been necessary, obviously, for the Japanese to attack the Philippines. They could have beat the Spanish just as easily as we had. And they would not have had to bomb Pearl Harbor in order to cripple the American fleet as they expanded throughout the Pacific. So when they expanded out into the Pacific, it would have been natural that they would have moved into Guam, which would have been a Spanish island rather than an American island. So that's my my gloss on the whole thing. A little extra information here about false flag operations. A famous quote came out of the Spanish-American War, and Joseph Pulitzer and William Randolph Hearst ran competing newspapers in New York at that time. Of course, in 1898, the internet wasn't working very well. So newspapers were the main source of news, and newspapers in cities like New York's would have 5 or 6 editions every day. They would keep printing new editions of the paper as they gathered more news. And so there was a circulation war between Pulitzer and Hearst. And according to the legend, the false flag legend, Hearst really wanted that Spanish-American War. So after the Maine was sunk, we don't know what role Hearst had in that, he sent a very famous portrait artist, Frederick Remington, to Havana to draw some pictures of the Maine, etc., and the sinking and the whole thing. And Hearst said, I need this for coverage of the war. And Remington allegedly said, war? And Hearst said, you furnish the pictures, I'll furnish the war. And that's my comment on yellow journalism. When people saw the Hearst pictures, the circulation war between those two press giants, it really inflamed public opinion. Remember the Maine, we can't stand for this. So there was great support for the Spanish-American War. False flag. There have been other false flags. I mentioned this one briefly the other day. In 1939, after World War I, a peace was imposed on Germany where Germany was split into 2 different areas. There was the German proper, and then Prussia north of what was called the Polish Corridor. And the peace treaty provided Poland an outlet to the sea that cut through those 2 parts of Germany. The name of the seaport was Danzig. Okay, I'll come back to the history lesson right after the big halftime show.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
Celebrating the new administration, I'm Carmen Roberts. Fox News. President Joe Biden becomes the 46th president of the United States. The celebration including an apropos song. The 90s pop band, the New Radicals, reuniting to join others for a star-studded inaugural celebration.
Tom Hanks hosting with socially distanced musical appearances from Bruce Springsteen, Bon Jovi, and more. President Biden spoke during the show, summing up the challenges he says the U.S. is facing.
The pandemic, economic crisis, racial injustice, the climate crisis, and threats to our very democracy.
But he continued to promote his theme of unity.
There isn't anything we can't do if we do it together.
And in her first speech as Vice President, Kamala Harris said, "We are undaunted in our belief that we shall overcome."
Fox's Jill Nato in Washington. World leaders welcoming President Biden into their ranks.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu sent greetings as American foes look for an opening. Iran hoping the Biden administration will sign up again to their nuclear deal. China, which jousted with the Trump administration to the end, is also looking for a break. And a spokesman for Russian President Vladimir Putin is hoping for, quote, good relations with his successor amid more signs of global challenges.
Fox's Greg Palcott. But some Republicans began criticizing President Biden on his first day in office. Congressman Matt Gaetz of Florida slamming the new president's theme of his inauguration.
We're entering a period of time where Joe Biden tells us to accept unity, but that unity appears to be at the expense of anyone who offers dissent or disagreement.
Gaetz talking to Fox News. And the Senate confirms the first member of Biden's cabinet. Avril Haines is the first woman director of national intelligence. America's listening to Fox News.
The vaccine is officially here, and we aren't just talking about the COVID vaccine, but a financial vaccine at Bank Pacific. We may not be doctors, but we can help you with your financial health. Whether to take advantage of today's crazy low rates, or just a local bank that has your back. At Bank Pacific, we want to help make 2021 your best year yet. Because for 66 years, where others put branches, we place roots, and we're rooting for you. Equal housing lender, member FDIC.
Half a day. This is Claire Manglona from Security Title with an important warning. Wire fraud is real, and home buyers and sellers are one of the biggest targets, even on Guam. When sending money by wire transfer, be sure to confirm the wire instructions by phone, not email. In this case, it's good to be suspicious and know who you're dealing with. Let the professionals at Security Title work with you to minimize loss due to wire fraud. We are here to help.
President Trump departed Washington for his home in Florida before the inauguration, the first president to do so in a century and a half. But he left a letter in the Oval Office for the new president.
The president wrote a very generous letter. It's because it was private. I will talk about it.
The world's largest retailer is offering to help the Biden administration with the COVID vaccine rollout.
A letter was sent to President Biden soon after he was sworn in by Dave Clark, CEO of Amazon's consumer business, saying that the tech giant stands ready to assist the federal government with its vaccine efforts. Clark wrote that Amazon is prepared to leverage their operations, IT, and communications capabilities and expertise to assist the administration with the process. And given Amazon's scale, it will allow them to make a meaningful impact immediately in the fight against COVID-19. Amazon is the second largest U.S. employer, and according to Clark, they already have plans to administer vaccines at their own facilities once they are available to them. Hillary Barsky, Fox News.
The National Guard's trying to determine what caused a helicopter crash Wednesday evening in upstate New York.
It started out as a routine training flight, but ended tragically when a UH-60 Black Hawk medical evacuation helicopter crashed in a farmer's field in western Mendon, New York. All 3 National Guard members on board were killed.
Fox's Sal Giangrasso. Scientists in China say they've developed a gene therapy which can reverse some of the effects of aging in mice and extend their lives. That information revealed in the Journal of Science Translational Medicine. On Wall Street, all 3 major benchmark indexes closed at record highs on upbeat earnings. And someone's a multimillionaire after winning Wednesday night's Powerball drawing for $730 million. The next drawing is Saturday for about $20 million. I'm Carmen Roberts, and this is Fox News.
Rolling sound, quiet, and action.
The Ray Gibson Show. Starring Senator Mana Silva Tyron as the news anchor.
I'm Mana Silva Tyron, and I'll have your local news every morning. Life moves pretty fast, so stay with us to stay informed right here on The Point.
Also starring Jerry Roberts as the Better Business Training Guru.
Get out there and do something good today. Like listen to us Monday through Friday, 6 to 10 a.m., where we go extra for you.
Produced by the real Joe Cruz. And your warm and intelligent host, Ray Gibson.
It's the Gibson Stream of Consciousness. All the players and all the games with cameos and calls from the most interesting people like you. We'll see and hear you right here on your talk radio superstation. This is The Point.
The Ray Gibson Show was filmed before a live Facebook audience.
Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro in Hagåtña and Mezcla Dos Upper Tumon are now open for takeout and delivery services. For more information, call now at 479-2652 or 3 or Mezcla Dos at 646-6295. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro brings you island hospitality with the true taste of modern Chamorro cuisine at the comfort of your own home. They take your local favorite dishes and serve them with extra flair you will only find at Mezcla. Mezcla, a true taste of Guam.
Okay, another great halftime show. No false flags here, just the stars and stripes, and that's it. On our football field, no Black Lives Matter, just the Star Spangled Banner and the American flag. So back to Poland. So in August of 1939, the Germans and the Soviet Union cut a deal to divide Poland between them. So the Germans needed a reason to attack Poland. So the story goes that there was a German radio station at a place called Gliwice, just a couple miles inside the German-Polish border. So what the Germans did was they got 25 or so dead bodies from German concentration camps and other places, dressed them in Polish uniforms, made it look like the radio station had been attacked and the attackers had driven off. And because of this invasion of their sovereign territory, the Germans had to counterattack and attack the Polish. Classic false flag operation. Before that, 1933, the German Parliament building, which is called the Reichstag, was set on fire and burned, of course. And because of the Reichstag fire, Hitler made the demand for extraordinary powers because it was blamed on the communists and, of course, on Jews. So Hitler said that, in order to combat this threat from the communists and the Jews, I've got to have extraordinary powers. So by the time it was done, with the death of former General Hindenburg, Hitler wound up as the Chancellor of Germany with absolute power to do whatever he wanted to do as far as Germany was concerned, brushing aside any parliament or whatever. So a person was named as the arsonist of the Reichstag, but the thinkers say that this was actually a false flag operation, and it was the Nazis themselves that set the Reichstag on fire in order to obtain that special power. We had something of a false flag operation in 1965 in the Tonkin Gulf, a body of water off Vietnam. We had a destroyer there called the Maddox, and we alleged that the North Vietnamese had attacked the Maddox and had done some damage, sort of in violation of the conventions that we'd had with the Vietnamese Navy at that time. So because of the attack on the Maddox, Congress adopted what was called the Tonkin Gulf Resolution. It was not a declaration of war, because we don't do that anymore. We don't do declarations of war. But it was the functional equivalent of a declaration of war, and scholars say that it wasn't a false flag and that we attacked ourselves. It was more like we faked the false flag operation. And then finally, I told you that I would give you an example of a false flag operation. And I hope I have that with me. Yeah, I have an article that during the occupation of the Capitol, someone snapped a picture of the flag of Palau, a pale blue field with a yellow sun in the middle of it. And I was working on kind of a script to say, well, this is obviously the Republic of Palau attempting to attack the Capitol because they're dissatisfied with the Compact of Free Association.
But I thought they got a Christmas drop.
But that turned out to be too tall a tale, even for tall tales. But there is a picture of the Palau flag at the Capitol.
Did you see I think, is it the president or Prime Minister of Palau wrote a letter disavowing that?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was interesting.
Uh-huh. And then finally on the Capitol here, and what actually happened, I have an article from PJ Media where it's the Washington Post versus the narrative. The Washington Post actually goes contra narrative. Self-styled militia members from Virginia and other states made plans to storm the U.S. Capitol days in advance of the January 6th attack, and then communicated in real time as they breached the building on opposite sides and talked about hunting for lawmakers, according to court documents filed Tuesday. While authorities have charged more than 100 individuals in the riot, details in the new allegations against 3 military veterans offer a disturbing look at what they allegedly said to one another. U.S. authorities charged an apparent leader, etc. Several paragraphs later in the story, in the WAPO story, we find this language. The arrest this weekend of several people with alleged ties to far-right extremist groups suggests that the riot was not an entirely impulsive outburst of violence, but an event instigated or exploited by organized groups.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, so that's what I say. The WAPO went against the narratives. CNN acknowledged last week that the storming of the Capitol was planned prior to Trump's speech, etc. CNN reported in the Washington Post article completely undermined the entire case the Democrats made for impeaching Trump. So there you go.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, a little bit late. So I'm going to wrap up what happened. This is what happened. This is the tall tales dogma on what happened on January 6th. Trump held a rally. Trump rallied the troops. If Trump is good at anything, it's rallying the troops. I suspect that now that he's not president anymore, several NFL football teams are going to try to hire him as a coach for no other reason than his inspiring halftime speeches to rally the team. So he rallied the troops, but if you read what he actually said, he didn't say, go over there and raise hell. And if you stop to think about it, what happened is actually against his interest, because it was in his interest to let Ted Cruz and the other senator Hawley make their case before the Senate to contest the counting of the electoral votes from the 6 states. That didn't happen. In fact, everybody but Hawley and Cruz dropped out. So that was the worst thing for Trump. It was exactly what he didn't need, was that incursion into the Capitol. He didn't provoke it. It was not in his interest. Now, some people around him made some pretty wild statements, but that's the way it goes. If you wanted to be legalistic about it, unless you could prove some kind of a overt conspiracy between those other folks and Trump, you can't hold him liable for what they said, regardless of how inflammatory it might be. We find out, and when people who kept track of the time, the people that broke into the Capitol arrived there 45 minutes before Trump finished his speech. So they didn't go from Trump's speech. Well, there was a good group there already. And we have the WAPO and CNN coming clean here. So I think what happened was that there was a group of outsiders who planned on going in and creating mayhem inside the Capitol. We find out that the Capitol Police let people into that building. They didn't have to crash. So a lot of people, when they get there, figure, well, if we can go in, I'm going to go in. I've never been in the Capitol. And, you got several thousand people there, but it only takes 100 or so of them to create the kind of confusion that makes really good camera optics. And I think that's what happened. But of course, if the left had caught Trump doing overtime parking at the Capitol, they would have impeached him. They were just aching for some reason to impeach him, knowing that it can't work. And the only reason they want to impeach him is because they don't think they could get away with what he really deserves, which is drawing and quartering, boiling in oil, stretched out on the rack, or at least tar and feathers. So that's what actually happened. So if anybody actually wants to know what happened at the Capitol, you heard it here on Tall Tales. Okay, so much for false flags. And I've got somebody in the green room who probably knows as much about false flags as anybody, not because he's ever raised one, but because he's a great source on such type of information. So tell us about false flags, Frenchie.
Well, hello, Bob. How are you?
Good.
Well, every country does it, when they want to pull a shenanigan on somebody. I mean, the Japanese did it at the famous Mutken incident where to invade Manchuria,
right?
Where they blew up their own train in order to invade the fake country there. Then you have, of course, the famous 1937 Marco Polo incident at the Marco Polo Gate, where they blame Chinese troops from opening fire on them, and then they invaded China. We have, of course, Stalin did a good one too when he wanted to go to war with Finland. He had the Red Army bomb his own village about 800 yards within the Russian border in a place called Manila. It's not Manila, but it's Manila. And then he used that as a pretext to try to invade Finland. And actually the Finn spanked the Red Army for several months there. And then, of course, don't forget, one of the biggest one ever was the famous vial shaken at the UN Security Council by a former general named Powell, pretending that the Iraqis had weapons of mass destruction, which led us to invade Iraq. So, I mean, false flags are quite common. They are a dime a dozen. Basically, this is what you were talking about, is reality versus narrative. And basically here, the Dems knew there was going to be a big rally, and they saw an opportunity and seized it. The former Sergeant of Arms of the Senate has said as much that all the security teams of the Senate of the House had refused his request for National Guard to intervene, and because he knew something was going to happen. So it's not surprising that they are doing it. They're just very good at it, and of course they get the media to back them up. And then we end up with presidential inauguration looking like the green zone in Baghdad. Nobody except some flags. Actually, I was laughing so hard last night. I was watching a Spanish program from Madrid, and the guy was saying that all those flags represent all the dead people that voted for Biden. There's a Spanish humor for you. I thought it was hilarious. But at the same time, if you listen to Crazy Nancy, it was the first time the Capitol was under attack and blah, blah, blah. Well, it's not true. I mean, D.C. was under siege by the Army of Virginia from Robert E. Lee, and we didn't have half the troops protecting the federal capital at the time. But back in '83, when we still had a lot of far left terrorist movement, you have the famous group M19, which was a communist revolutionary organization who actually bombed the second floor of the U.S. Senate back in 1983. And what's very interesting is that there was a woman who was part of that group, Susan Rosenberg, who was finally caught by the FBI a year later in '84, and then she was sentenced to a very long prison term because she also participated in a 1981 robbery of the Brinks back in New York. I don't know if you remember that, where several cops got shot, and she also helped what was her name? Joanne Chesimard, aka Assata Shakur, who is still on the run, by the way, escaped from prison in 1979. So she was one of those radical leftists that we saw in the 60s and 70s that still existed in the early 80s, even though the FBI had them basically under prison. And this lady was pardoned in 2001 by Bill Clinton, and guess what she is doing now? She's a board member for the group that raised funds for BLM. So if you don't think everything is tied up, it is. Nothing is surprising. They're recycling the same terrorists to do their nasty work, and then when they get a little older, they just do fundraisings. But it's very hypocritical. And again, it's the reality versus the narrative, and they keep pushing on the narrative. But what I wanted to talk about was two things. Already we've seen that Biden is already, by his choice of people that he's putting in place. You talked about it with that transgender doctor. They want to impose diversity, but it's basically it's not diversity because they all think the same thing. They're all about identity politics and basically the centralization of uniformity. They want everybody to be like them, and if you're not like them, it's like in the Cultural Revolution under Mao. you end up being sent back to a re-education camp or to a gulag. And basically this is how far the left has gone now in the U.S., and it's very worrisome. But economically, what we are seeing and we're going to have a huge fight, probably not until next year, because right now it's the budget that has been voted during the Trump administration. But next year, when they start looking at the budget, already you see that all the states and all the cities that are run by Democrats, they basically want a federal bailout. And if you look at all those states, including California, including New York, they all failed economically. They all broke. They don't have money. They have very high rate of tax. If you look, most of those states, like California and New York, you pay over 50% of your revenue if you add federal, state, and local taxes. So it's already a very high tax rate, and then they want to bring it up even more. And basically, they're going to impose on the states that have been very careful in running their economy and very responsible on how they spend and everything, basically bail out those states that have been made bad decisions. The states and the cities that bring sanctuary cities, free everything for the illegals, and now it's even free health care on top of the schools and the housing and everything. It's an endless, it's a bottomless pit. And basically there's 50% of the population asking the other 50% that have saved money to bail them out. It's a little bit the cricket and the ant fable, right? Mm-hmm. Right, but the cricket had parties all summer, and now suddenly he's starving, and he knocks on the ant's door because he needs some food, and so this is where we are right now. And I don't see this is going to be a very healing process at all. It's just going to make things worse. And Biden, ironically enough, I couldn't believe he said that just 2 days ago. He says that he was bemoaning the fact that people lies for power and profit. And I said, well, he must have looked at himself in the mirror this morning. It's just amazing. So finally, I have, I think I want to touch a little bit every day is the people that have been put in power by the Biden administration. So now you have this Samantha Power. She's one of the Obama girls. She was the U.S. ambassador to the UN from 13 to 17. So the last 4 years of the Obama administration. And now she's been made the head of the U.S. Agency for International Development, which is a very important position. And she was a big advocate to overthrow Gaddafi. She is an interventionalist, and she is a very dangerous woman. And what's quite amazing is that she's a Yale and a Harvard graduate, another one. But unfortunately, she made declaration saying like Mao Zedong was an amazing political leader and that we should inspire ourselves by it. And this is the kind of people that are coming to power. So we have a few things to worry about.
True enough.
So here we go. That was my thing for today.
Good timing, Frenchie. You just you took it right up to the break. So I appreciate your insight, your call, and your timing.
Thank you.
Nice talking to you.
Have a nice evening.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Okay, we're going to take a short break, and then we're going to go from there to Thailand.
The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts of Guam Training.
Hi, I'm Jerry Roberts, and every day on The Ray Gibson Show, I get to comment on the incredibly diverse, fun, challenging, sometimes frustrating, often exciting, but always interesting world of work. I hope you'll be there with us.
You can find daily transcripts of The Extra Point at guamtraining.com. Tune in every weekday morning at 7:20 for The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts, brought to you by Guahan Insurance Services and First Hawaiian Bank on 93.3 The Point.
Chili's Chili's has a dinner deal you can't miss. Enjoy a tasty appetizer, 2 bottomless Coca-Cola beverages, and 2 mouth-watering entrees, all for just $35. Treat yourself to entree options like our fall-off-the-bone baby back ribs, personal fajita with chicken, or the ultimate bacon burger. Chili's, 2 for $35. Available daily from 3 p.m. to closing for patio dining or takeout. Chili's is located on the 2nd floor of the Tucumán Sands Plaza. Call 648-7377 to place your takeout order today. With Chili's, you can still savor the moment at home.
Seventh inning stretch, Wrigley Field in Chicago, and we go from Wrigley Field straight to Thailand. We have a special flight booked straight to Thailand. So good afternoon, Thailand.
How you doing today?
You're doing great.
I was on Facebook and I saw you, and I caught it when you were saying that President Trump didn't incite the riot.
That's what I said.
How do you think he didn't incite the riot? I mean, for more than 2 months after the election, he said it was stolen. And then it was stolen by the court. So how else would the Patriots get the election back at the Stop the Steal rally?
I don't follow. Let's proceed on the basis that for 2 months, Trump said that the election was stolen.
Well, we don't have to proceed. That's what he said, remember?
Yeah, okay.
That's what he was saying.
All right, so he said that the election was...
Wouldn't you agree on that?
He said the election was stolen. So
No, that's what Trump said. I didn't say that.
I said, that's what he said.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I thought you said I said. My apologies.
Yeah. Okay, so for 2 months, Trump said the election was stolen. Now, that means, and because he said it was stolen, people broke into the Capitol building.
No.
Well,
I'm saying he said it was stolen, right? And he went to court. But the court still wouldn't look at it. So the courts were even cheating Trump, right?
No, wrong.
He didn't say that?
He said that in some. You got to be careful now.
About the courts?
Okay, yeah, a little bit of careful there. You know, if you're saying it's something that Trump said, that's a little different than what happened. But okay, well, you say that Trump said that the court stole it from him. Okay, so because Trump said that the court stole the election from him, people broke into the Capitol.
Yes.
Is that right?
Trump has a very good hold on some people. You don't believe that?
I believe that.
They would do anything for him?
As a matter of fact, I said that a little earlier. I said if Trump is good at anything, he's good at rallying the troops. That's what I said.
So, I mean, you don't think that people would do that? If the court stole it from him, and what other way would he get it back? The courts aren't helping him, right? When you agree to that?
There's a leap in logic there, Thailand.
How?
Well, because people believe...
Cause and effect.
Well, that's what I'm saying. It's a leap in logic. Would you do that if you thought the election was stolen? Would you break into the Capitol?
No.
Nor would I.
But some people did, as we saw in video, right?
All right. So you're saying that Trump said the election was stolen and people broke into the Capitol. Therefore, because Trump said the election was stolen, people broke in. It doesn't follow.
Let me ask you a question. Do you know the definition of inciting?
I do indeed.
You know what that means?
I do indeed.
Can you tell me what? So you don't think Trump has been doing that since the election?
No.
You don't think he's been inciting the crowd? You don't think he has?
Well,
really?
Okay, inciting the crowd and inciting the crowd to invade the Capitol are two different things. You know, I mentioned...
Well, the rally was called Stop the Steal, right?
I use the analogy of Trump as a football coach. You know, that at the halftime...
I would think more like...
Hold on a second here.
Wouldn't you?
Hold on a second. it works better if one of us talks at a time. I'm the host here. I shouldn't have to fight to get the floor, okay? I mentioned earlier that Trump is good at inciting people, but it doesn't follow that because he said the election was stolen, that he incited people to invade the Capitol. That's a leap in logic.
You ready for me?
I'm ready.
I didn't want to be rude or anything.
Go ahead.
Okay. Now, I understand what you're saying, but wouldn't you agree that a person and people are different? Like, a person can think logically, but when you got a group together, they kind of think panicky and rationally and scared. And the rally, like I said, was called Stop the Steal. How else would you stop the steal? Like Mike Pence, and even like you said, Ted Cruz was in the process of doing it the legal way. So you don't think he incited those people?
No, I don't.
Okay. Okay. I mean, I just, even with the definition of inciting, it seems like Trump kind of fit it. And then Mo Brooks telling the people to take names and kick ass.
Well, Trump is Trump, Mo Brooks is Mo Brooks. And as I mentioned earlier, if you could prove up some kind of an conspiracy, otherwise you can't hold Trump liable for what Mo Brooks said. Mo Brooks is an independent operator.
Well, what about Rudy? Could we hold Rudy liable? Because he is Trump's lawyer, and he said trial by combat, right?
He did say that, yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of, you think that's inciting people a little bit?
Well, it usually works the other way around. But, yeah, inciting. Okay, all right, let's define terms. I'll say this, that Trump did incite people to march to the Capitol. That's what he said. Go to the Capitol, be peaceful. Am I taking too long here?
No.
Okay.
Go ahead. I was just laughing.
Yes, thank you. He said, march to the Capitol, be peaceful, etc. You know, we know exactly what he said. He didn't say go to the Capitol and tear the place apart. So he incited them to do that, and he did want to...
He also... I'm sorry.
Yeah, pardon me for talking. We're interrupting, Thailand. He didn't say go to the Capitol and tear it up. And as I mentioned earlier, it was not in his interest to have those proceedings stopped, because that was his best shot at challenging the election before the Congress.
Okay, now in that speech, did he also say we have to show them how to do it, even the weak Republicans?
Okay.
Did he say that in his speech too?
I don't remember, but if you say that he did, I'll go along with it.
Yeah, he definitely did say that. Did you watch the speech at all?
No, I didn't.
Or just kind of this? Oh, so you didn't even watch the speech. So how do you know if he incited someone or not?
I didn't watch a lot of things, but I know what happened because I can read.
Wait, but wouldn't you rather see it than hearing what's up? Because that could be fake news you're reading.
Well, if I had the time, I might have, but I didn't watch it this time. But this is not about me. This is about Trump. Yeah.
Inciting the rioting.
Yeah. And I hold that.
You can't say if he did or not, right?
I hold it's my.
Say that
yes, I can. I hold that Trump did not incite a riot. That's my position for the reasons that I've explained. And to say that Trump did, gave even an inflammatory speech is not the same thing as inciting a riot.
But how can you say that and you didn't see the speech? Like you couldn't even use your testimony.
I didn't see Lincoln at Gettysburg either, but I know what the speech said and I know the effect that it had.
But you read the speech.
If you have an argument, present it. But let's not spend a whole lot of time on why I didn't watch the speech. That's not an argument, Thailand.
Well, I mean, it would kind of be if I watched the speech, which I did, and you didn't watch the speech. So how can you say he didn't incite the riot if you didn't watch the speech? That would almost be like saying I'm at your house, but I'm in Georgia and not Guam, right?
I don't know where you are. I know that you signed
But
on
I'm
as...
just saying, like, I could... But like you saying that he didn't incite the speech and you not seeing it, could we use that in court? Wouldn't that be hearsay almost?
No, it wouldn't.
It would.
Do you have any...
Would allow you saying, well, I read the speech.
Do you have anything else, any other points to make? I don't want to spend a whole lot of time on who watched the speech and who didn't.
Okay. So
I don't find that very persuasive.
I'm sorry, okay. Do you believe that Trump is still president then?
Do you have anything else, Thailand? Do you have anything serious to say?
I guess not. I was just curious about the inciting, but since you didn't see the speech, you can't really be talking about it, I think. It's kind of like fake news, but...
Yeah, thanks for calling.
This is what happens when someone thinks they're smart and knows what's going on, starts to talk.
Yeah.
They really reveal their ignorance more than they said something smart.
Exactly. Okay, I got a full panel here. I got a full green room. Let me see who else. Maybe I can talk to somebody else who wants to talk about who saw the speech and who didn't. Let's see. I've got R. Keith, R. Carl, and Joe. I'm going to take them in that order, starting out with R. Keith. Go ahead, R. Keith.
Hello, Bob and Jose. Before I get to the quick point that I called for, I really must opine on the previous caller.
Go ahead.
Jose, you nailed it. He's reading off a script, ignorant of what's actually going on, but thinks he's brilliant, which is actually sort of your standard progressive. If he wants to talk about inciting crowds and inciting riots, how about two things? One, his favorite president, I believe some quotes coming out of Obama's mouth were, get in their face and bring a gun to a knife fight. I'd like to hear his opinion on that. Number two, the number of Democrat politicians, Sheila Jackson Lee, Alexia, occasionally conscious or whatever her name is, Maxine Waters, the rest of the squad, all cheering on the BLM riots.
Yeah, interesting.
I mean, actively cheering them on and wishing them good luck, and these are deserved because America's a horrible place. You want to talk about inciting riots, sir? We can talk about inciting riots.
Well, that is a term that has a definition. And what, from what I know about it, I've read about it, I've studied it to some extent. What Trump did, what Trump said, does not meet the legal definition of inciting a riot. It meets Thailand's definition, which he's welcome to. He just can't expect me to adopt it on the extremely firm basis that he watched the speech and I didn't. And that was basically his argument.
I liked your response that you weren't there for Lincoln's Gettysburg Address, but you know what was in it. Very well said.
Thank you very much.
Now, for the reason I called, I was sent a link by a friend that lists its 23 pages of Trump administration accomplishments with details. TrumpWhiteHouse.archives.gov. I strongly suggest anyone who wants ammunition against their, oh, wait a minute, is that inciting a riot? Can I say ammunition? To argue against the narrative which is going to be unraveling and the rewriting of the Trump administration's history, to print this out, save copies of it, because it's certainly not how the media and the Democrats are going to be remembering the Trump administration. TrumpWhiteHouse.archives.gov.
Okay, good tip.
Have a nice day, gentlemen.
Okay, well, thanks for calling, our Keith. So we're going to head for Churchill Downs, and on the home stretch, I'm going to be talking with the most dangerous man at the racetrack.
Want to win $100? Join the Guam Visitors Bureau's Protect Guam campaign series to show how you're helping our island in the fight against COVID-19. There are 2 ways to win. Upload your photos or videos to visitguam.com or share on social media how you're wearing your mask, showcasing Guam heroes, or staying active and healthy with the Protect Guam hashtag. Don't forget to download the Guam COVID Alert app. Let's protect and support each other through these tough times. For a chance to win $100, check out visitguam.com.
Okay, Google. Hey, Siri. Hi, Bixby.
Go ahead. I'm listening.
Open the Point app. Opening.
Live stream, on demand, swap stations. Check out the visual radio. Get the free app available on the App Store and Google Play, or go to thepoint.gu.
Okay, so here we are, the home stretch, Churchill Downs, Louisville, Kentucky. And I've got our Joe in the green room, but first of all, I'm going to go to the most dangerous man on the racetrack. Go for it, Carl.
Can you hear me, Bob?
I can hear you loud and clear, Carl.
Okay. Yeah, I won't make this longer as I sometimes do. But to me, what's evident is that I don't think the media even believes that Trump incited the riot in his speech, because if he did, they would be cutting out those snippets of his speech where he said, I want you to go to that Capitol and I want you to tear that place apart. And they would be running it over and over and over and over again. I haven't seen any of that. Nothing. I mean, I don't.
Carl, I got to interrupt you here for a really important question.
What?
Did you watch Trump's speech?
I haven't watched a lot of.
Then you can't talk about it. You cannot speak.
Yeah.
You cannot speak about it with any authority because you didn't watch the speech. Go on, Carl.
Yeah, well, he talks quite a bit. I think I'd be watching stuff for a long, long, long time. But yeah, you just don't see that. What they would normally be doing if they had a got you moment, they would be playing that over and over and over and over on CNN, on MSNBC. I mean, it would be just the hottest video on the internet and elsewhere. And there's just nothing. There's just nothing. I haven't seen anything about it. It's really a stretch. And I agree with what you said. He did, quote, incite the crowd to go to the Capitol. And he said before they departed, go there peacefully and, I don't know, something like make your voices be heard or something. And I've seen video of the outside where, I think there was like an estimated 30 to over 40,000 people that were there. They're charging, I've heard, anywhere from 100 to 150 people so far. What percentages of that is of 40,000? Less than 1%, or maybe a fraction of 1%. That were, and as you said, that there were people that had gone ahead. They were there 45 minutes before he even finished his speech. They were anarchists, a few on the left. But there are right-wing anarchists too, and they wanted to cause trouble, which they did. So anyway, I just wanted to bring that up. That I haven't seen any evidence of that. What would be repeated infinitely on mainstream media if they had caught him in that gotcha moment? I want you to go over there and tear that place apart. And as you said, that was completely against his interest to do such a thing. Anyway, Bob, that's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Good talking to you, Carl. Okay, so I've got this is not another Joe. It is another Joe because you've shown him here as Joe. He's not just Joe. He's another Joe. Yeah, that's better. And then I've got Dr. Ron McNinch, also in the green room, who's going to back you up. Another Joe. So go for it.
Yeah, Bob. Yeah, I think what it is he was trying to rile up a little bit the previous two calls ago earlier. But at least he was having a dialogue. I mean, I've encountered obvious liberals who not only do they want to rile people up or shame them or tell them how bad they were for having a different point of view, but they didn't want to have a dialogue. They just basically, you're bad, be gone. So I don't know, but it's your show. You're the host, so obviously he can't do that to you. But he was suggesting that you didn't watch it. They were constantly playing bits. What they thought were the important bits, where he was saying go and march, and I think once or twice some media did admit that he did clarify to go peacefully, and definitely like when he went back on to respond, he did say that he did clarify. Trump did that he suggested to go peacefully, and so for the most part, what I gather is, even with the Republicans, right, they're unsure what happened, but the Republicans who kept track of it, were suggesting. Well, the one guy I agree that I thought maybe was closer to the truth was Mr. Bohannon, right, which is on this channel later on in the evening. He was suggesting that Trump he let the crowd basically to become a mob, and he's kind of partly responsible for that. In the perspective of the buck stops here, yeah, possibly he should have kept. And then definitely after it became a mob, he definitely should have been more vocal. I think. I don't know how, but it's possible he could have done that. But having said that, no, I don't think that he incited the mob to destroy the Capitol building, and they obviously didn't have something that they could use against him, because they would have been playing it over and over again, right, on the news. So he's when people go on the thing that's really frustrating is when the leaders like Pelosi and the Democrats, when they keep up this narrative and they keep insisting, and everyone is taking it as talking points, and they're not doing fact checking. That's the frustrating part. And I've said this over and over. Trump was not my first choice. I liked Jeb Bush better, but I got to figure out what he was about, and he was wanting to drain the swamp, so to speak. He wanted to root out corruption. So this is, to me, even up until now, I mean, even after he left office, right, there needs to address the issue of the election officials, all those affidavits. They need to look into these things, and then there's still that.
I want to go back to the issue of whether Trump incited, just for a moment, another Joe.
I don't think he did.
Oh, okay. So earlier in the program, I gave my theory of what happened. I don't know if you were listening at that time.
Okay.
Were you listening?
Most of it, yeah.
Yeah. So the caller, who calls himself Thailand, called in and said that, asked me if I didn't believe that Trump incited the riot. Well, here on Tall Tales, we try to be precise with the language that we use. I don't want anybody coming in here and talking about normalcy or referring to Jose as they. I mean, that's just kind of the way we operate here. We want to use precise language, because if you don't, it's very easy for misunderstandings to arise. So I'm a stickler on that. And when you're having argument, not two people calling each other out into the middle of the street, but what lawyers do in court, the way you frame an issue has an awful lot to do with how that issue is going to come out. So the caller asked me if I didn't believe that Trump incited the riot. No, I don't believe that. After having given that discourse a little earlier in the program that obviously prompted him to call. So then he said, well, for 2 months before that, Trump was talking about the election being stolen. Well, if you know anything about inciting a riot, the inciting has to occur contemporaneously with the start of the riot. You can't say something on the 4th of July and a riot erupts on Labor Day and so, well, you obviously incited that riot on the 4th of July. So that was not an argument. It was an expression expression of a deeply held emotion. And once again, emotion is not the currency of tall tales. If it's anything, I hope it's logic. So the caller had 2 points. One was that Trump had been talking about the election had been being stolen, and 2, that I didn't watch the speech. And therefore, it was his position that he had the argumentative high ground. And then we went from there to something, an obvious throwaway of whatever seriousness his position had when he asked me if I believe that Trump was still president. So
he was trying to rile you up for sure, yeah.
One of the rules of tall tales is you don't play pin the tail on the talk show host, and that's exactly what he was trying to do. So I will stick with all of those things. If someone can come along who understands what incite a riot means and put on some decent proofs, well, then maybe I can be convinced. But an outpouring of emotion couched in almost non-sequiturs like, well, you don't know because you didn't watch the speech, don't fly on tall tales. So anyhow, I want to give Ron McNinch a couple of minutes here, Arjo.
Okay, thanks a lot for your time there, Uncle Bob, and Happy New Year.
Good afternoon, Ron.
Hey, happy day, Senator. Happy day, Guam. Yeah, I was listening to your show earlier, and I was going to point out one other little quick piece of trivia about Guam, and that is not only was it desired as a coaling station by the United States, it's also the largest source of fresh water in the region. And so that's just one quick little thing. Regarding the Trump speech and what he said, because of my job, I watch every single presidential rally as well as every single major political event, whether it was Biden or Harris or whomever. And I watched that discussion fully on January 6th, start to finish, especially after things went the way they did. And I don't think President Trump incited insurrection or incited a riot or anything else. I think that basically what I'm concerned about is just how social media appeals to a certain kind of person. And the reason is the way social media works is they actuate behavior by soliciting these groups and coordinating these groups, whether they're doing it to mainly get their numbers up, but what it does is it creates this basically a cohort of very ill-minded people. And so quite often when you look at how Facebook and Twitter and these other groups are being used, these people who have these really fringe ideas, Trump held several hundred speeches and rallies during the term he was president. There wasn't outbreaks in the street when he'd go to North Carolina or wherever he would go and give a public speech or hold a rally during the campaign cycle. There weren't, people breaking down doors anywhere. I think President Trump's biggest mistake this past year, and if he made a mistake, is he didn't invoke the Insurrection Act to deal with these burning cities. I think he made a mistake there because what it did is it kind of set something in some of these crazy people's minds that they can do this kind of stuff. Especially, and by the way, I don't think everybody who stormed the Capitol necessarily was a Trump supporter. Not in the way that Trump would want them to be. On the other hand, I think that President Trump did make some problematic references to groups like the Proud Boys during the campaign cycle and things like that, which I don't think he should have done. I think he probably backed away from those. But in terms of the president inciting anything, I think that they said even before he was sworn in, they were going to impeach him. They constantly talked about impeaching him. They constantly talked about invoking the 25th Amendment or getting the vice president to invoke the 25th Amendment. Even before the pandemic, they were talking about these things. So,
hey, Ron, good call. I wish we could spend a little more time, but we're running out of time. Thanks for calling.
Hey, there's always tomorrow, Senator. Always tomorrow.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
Roberts, Fox News. Violent protests during the inauguration did not come from the far right, as so many feared, but in Portland, Oregon, a protest by a crowd of anti-police demonstrators turned violent last night. Federal officers declaring a gathering unlawful and firing tear gas at about 150 people. Earlier, protesters marched through the streets of Portland and Seattle.
Protesters dressed all in black smashed windows of a building that houses the Oregon Democratic Party and carried signs saying that we are not governable and a new world from the ashes. Several arrests have been made there. Meantime, in Seattle, between 50 and 75 protesters also dressed in black, and for a while they stood in the middle of an intersection blocking traffic.
Fox's Trace Gallagher. That's in stark contrast to Washington, D.C., where the inauguration of Joe Biden went smoothly with only small, subdued protests. The violence also flies in the face of President Biden's message.
This is a great nation. We're a good people. And to overcome the challenges in front of us requires the most elusive of all things in a democracy: unity.
Former President Trump skipped the ceremonies, but three other former presidents, George Bush, Bill Clinton, and Barack Obama, attended to show their unity. One of the biggest challenges for the new administration is getting control of the coronavirus. Johns Hopkins reports more than 4,200 people in the U.S. died yesterday from the virus.
We must set aside politics and finally